Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. So, you're planning a trip to the US, or maybe you're just an American curious about how the rest of the world sees you. Well, get ready, because today we're counting down the absolute biggest cultural shocks that international visitors experience when they touch down in the States. We've dug deep into the data, the historical records, and the sociological studies to bring you the top 10 most surprising things about American life. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think America is just burgers and Hollywood? Think again. We're kicking off part 1 of our countdown right now, and we're starting with everyday interactions. You know, the kind of stuff that catches almost everyone completely off guard. Coming in at number 10, friendly strangers. When you visit the US, people are going to smile and ask, "How are you?" even if they've literally never met you before. Now, to a lot of foreigners, this feels, well, either incredibly welcoming or completely fake. Sociologists actually have a brilliant analogy for this. They call the US a peach culture. Basically, Americans are soft and sweet on the outside, super easy to approach and chat with, but they have a hard pit in the center, meaning it actually takes a lot of time to get to know them on a deeper, intimate level. Contrast that with coconut cultures, which is how a lot of the rest of the world operates. Coconuts are hard to crack on the outside, but once you're in, fiercely loyal friends. So why the peachiness? Historically, Americans were a highly mobile people. They were constantly moving across this vast frontier, having to make super quick connections just to survive, but also having to let them go just as easily. So remember, a quick, "Good, thanks," is usually totally fine, because to an American, "How are you?" really just means hi.
Moving on to number 9, ice. Ice everywhere. Water, soda, juice, it doesn't matter. Almost every single drink comes absolutely packed with ice, even if it's freezing outside. To understand this kind of quirky obsession, we actually have to look all the way back to the 1800s, to a Boston businessman named Frederick Tudor. They called him the Ice King. He literally revolutionized the beverage industry by harvesting these massive 300-pound blocks of ice from frozen New England lakes and shipping them all over the country and even the world. Ice was basically treated like a crop, and it just sparked this national devotion. Fast forward to 1948, and about 90% of American homes had a refrigerator. Compare that to just 2% in Britain at the time. That massive century-and-a-half head start on mass refrigeration, that cemented the ice cube as a completely non-negotiable part of the American dining experience.
And speaking of dining, that brilliantly illustrates our number 8 cultural shock, huge food portions. Seriously, order one meal in the US and you might get enough food for 2 people. It's wild. There was actually a joint study between the University of Pennsylvania and researchers in Paris where they weighed identical types of restaurant meals. The average portion size in Paris, 277 grams, but in Philadelphia, it was 346 grams. That is a full 25% larger. They even found that Chinese restaurant portions in Philly were a whopping 72% larger than the exact same dishes in Paris. Because of this absolute abundance of food, taking leftovers home, asking for a doggy bag, is a completely normal, totally expected part of American culture, whereas, in other places that might be frowned upon.
But wait, the next shock is so big that a simple road trip can last all day.
Welcome to part 2 of our countdown, focusing on infrastructure. And we're starting with number 7. America is huge. I mean, the sheer scale of the country is something international visitors fundamentally underestimate. The United States covers almost exactly 10 million square kilometers. To put that into perspective, that is roughly the size of the entire continent of Europe. The distances are just so much larger than most visitors expect. You can literally drive for 10 to 12 hours straight in a state like Texas, and guess what? You're still in Texas. This is exactly why the cross-country road trip is such a massive cultural rite of passage, and why domestic flights are practically a necessity if you want to see, say, New York, the Grand Canyon, and Miami all in a single trip.
All right, number 6 is tipping culture. At restaurants, leaving a 15 to 20% tip is just expected. Many visitors are genuinely shocked to learn that it's not an optional bonus, it's an essential part of the dining experience and the server's actual wage. So how did this happen? Well, interestingly enough, tipping originally started as a European aristocratic custom. Wealthy Americans brought it back with them in the 1850s, and initially people hated it. They called it un-American. But after the Civil War, companies, like the ones running the Pullman luxury railcars, hired newly freed Southern black men, paid them a super low base wage, and forced them to rely on tips to survive. The practice spread like wildfire. Then, in 1966, Congress actually legally established the tip credit. This allowed restaurants to pay a sub-minimum wage, and in many states today, that base wage is still just $2.13 an hour, with the assumption being that tips will cover the rest.
So yeah, tipping isn't just a thank you for good service, it is quite literally the worker's livelihood.
Coming in hot at number 5, drive-thru everything. First introduced in the 1940s by a place called Red's Giant Hamburger down in Missouri, the drive-thru is absolutely taken over American life. Right now, it accounts for over 70% of all fast food sales. But Americans didn't just stop at burgers. No way. Today, you can grab your morning coffee, do your banking, pick up a prescription, and yes, if you're in a place like Las Vegas, you can even get married, all without ever stepping foot outside your car. It is basically the ultimate expression of American convenience and car culture rolled into one.
You've seen giant roads and drive-thrus, but what Americans keep inside their homes may surprise you even more.
Welcome to Part 3. Let's step indoors. Number 4 on our list is wooden houses. Just consider this headline from your story, Why Americans Still Build Wooden Homes, a fire that sparked a debate. It really captures the confusion. Many visitors coming from Europe, Asia, or South America, where homes are traditionally built using concrete, brick, or stone so they last for centuries, are completely floored to see vast American suburbs built primarily out of wooden frames. But there's a practical reason for it. It's just so much faster and cheaper to build with wood. And because of America's historically massive timber resources, well, it just made perfect economic sense.
Number 3, air conditioning everywhere. Malls, schools, offices, restaurants, they stay perpetually, sometimes freezing cold, even during the absolute hottest summers. Now, what's really interesting here is how buildings used to be designed. If you look at the layouts of old buildings like the 1898 Chicago Board of Trade, you'll notice all the offices are super shallow. They line the outside walls or face a central light cord. Why? Well, that was to allow for natural ventilation and light before modern AC existed. But once commercial air conditioning took off in the early 20th century, architects were suddenly completely freed up. They could build these massive, deep, windowless interior spaces that entirely relied on mechanical cooling. America essentially redesigned its whole architectural landscape around the air conditioner.
Down to number 2, free refills. Finish your soft drink or coffee at an American diner, and you're probably going to get another one completely for free. Sometimes unlimited refills are just included right in the price. This is a huge shock to international visitors. Actually, historical texts note that Europeans were bewildered by free coffee refills in America as far back as the 1890s. Fast forward to today, and while it's a total staple of American dining, other countries are actively pushing back against the concept. In 2017, for instance, France officially passed a law banning the unlimited sale of sugary drinks at all public eateries to combat obesity, but over in the US, the free refill remains the undisputed champion of the fast food experience.
And now, the number 1 cultural shock that almost every visitor notices immediately.
Welcome to Part 4, where we reveal the ultimate cultural shock, personal space. Americans generally prefer more personal space during conversations and daily interactions. To really understand this, we have to look at the work of cultural anthropologist Edward T. Hall. Back in 1963, he coined the term proxemics, which is essentially the study of how we humans use space. Hall categorized the space around our bodies into 4 main zones: intimate, personal, social, and public. Basically, we carry this invisible bubble around with us everywhere we go, and when someone breaches that bubble without permission, it causes physical discomfort, a bit of anxiety, maybe even anger.
So, the crucial point here is how the size of that invisible bubble changes depending on where you grew up. Studies show that Americans require a much larger personal space bubble just to feel comfortable. An American feels good talking to an acquaintance at roughly 4 feet away. Meanwhile, in many parts of Europe and the rest of the world, a comfortable conversation distance is much closer, usually around 2 to 3 feet. So what happens? This creates this hilarious but kind of awkward dance, where a foreign visitor steps closer to be friendly and engaged, and the American continuously steps backward to maintain their 4-foot bubble. It's entirely invisible, but it is for sure the number 1 thing visitors feel literally the second they start chatting with someone in the States.
Which cultural shock surprised you the most? Comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow for more amazing USA facts.